On April 19th, 2016, Donald Trump was at a presidential rally in Michigan. And what we heard that day was the famous slogan, "What do you have to lose?" In August 2016, he did it again.
What do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? What do you have to lose? I say it again. What do you have to lose? Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
Now, again, we hear this positioning. He's saying you're living in poverty. Your schools are a mess. What do you have to lose by trying something new like Trump? Now, for those of us who are from the black community, we can infer that's who he's talking to. And of course, with black people historically voting Democrat the last 40 or 50 years, then it makes sense because crime was high, poverty was high, especially in most major large cities where blacks are at: Detroit, Chicago, New York City, etc., Memphis. So what do you have to lose? Because in other words, you're gonna continue to have the same thing you got now. You can't get any worse. Might as well try Trump. And this messaging coming from Donald Trump did more good than actually bad. And the reason is because he's direct. Donald Trump is completely direct, almost unapologetically direct. And black people really love this tell it how it is personality, especially if it's coming from a non-black person. Even if you don't like me, if you tell it how it is, I can respect you. And while most blacks didn't respect Donald Trump, it did get some blacks to respect him. And then we started to see the burgeoning of particular black conservatives such as Anthony Brian Logan in 2015. Then later on, we would see Brandon Tatum and then Candace Owens. But those black conservatives were coming out and talking about the black community in ways that most people hadn't heard. And so many other blacks started to be inspired because black conservatives were then telling black people, you have a victim mentality. These things aren't stopping you. You are the only ones holding yourself back. It's not white people. And that particular talking point resonated with a lot of blacks who held a certain level of contempt for black Americans. Fast forward. This brings me to the Abba and Preach situation when there was a debate with a young man by the name of Night Talk. The debate had to do with, school lunches. And now Abba, who is from Canada, is more liberal. This brother Night Talk is from Georgia, and he's a black guy who typically was on the left and of course became on the right. And how he did it was very interesting.
But there was a point where before I had this transition of perspective and I was more of a liberal. I can't even say I was more of a liberal, bro. I've always had conservative values, man. But as far as the race element and the black power element and the victim mindset, I was thoroughly immersed in it. That was my perspective, man. And anything that went against the way that I viewed the world, I deemed the devil.
Now, this guy is saying that at first he didn't like Brandon Tatum, but he started to listen to Brandon Tatum. And then from there, he understood that Brandon Tatum was right. And then he continued to discuss his journey.
Me and hell, the majority of my close ones have not gone through anything remotely close to what our ancestors has gone through, bro. But we wear it, we live it, we learn it, we're submerged into it. So it's impossible to pull you out. And there's no way you can talk somebody out of that. And I remember talking to this person, he's like, man, there's nothing you can tell them. It's like talking to a wall. And it is, but it bothers the hell out of me, but knowing that fact now, because that's really what is keeping everybody down. That's what's keeping the entire black community down, is that mindset, that perspective, because we still live under that cap, under that box.
He said it was the victim mentality that black people just needed to come out of that was really just so bad. And, now he felt that he was free after getting out of the situation. But then something else is interesting.
And once I got out, man, I was so embarrassed about how I used to be. You know what I'm saying? How weak I looked, bruh. Talking to homies, like people that aren't black, that would never confront me about how weak I looked to them when I was living in that black box.
He then talks about the fact that once he started to talk to non-black people, he felt bad because of how he used to interact with them. And now, because he's a black conservative, or he's no longer blaming racism for all of his issues, Now he feels like he's free and he's standing up for himself as a man and, things like that, right? He doesn't feel like he's an idiot anymore. And I kind of want to talk about that because this is what many black conservatives try to tell black people, that, hey, you need to stop having a victim mentality. You need to come over to the right or even to the Republican Party. And if you do this, your life will change. And I want to talk about Republicans in the sense, right? Because what makes somebody a Republican or Democrat is typically ideological issues. And that's the reason why I vote Republican. Limited government, right? That's number one. Emphasis on reducing regulations and bureaucracy. Strong belief that free markets and private enterprise solve problems better than government programs. I definitely believe that. Fiscal responsibility. Lower taxes, especially on business individuals, as a way to encourage investment and growth. True, all right? Traditional social values, okay? I mean, like, I'm a Christian, but again, you will see that a lot of it is rooted in Christianity, opposition to abortion, strong national defense and patriotism, individual liberty and personal responsibility, free market capitalism, law and order, okay? This is typically what they do. Now, Democrats are different. Democrats believe in equality and inclusion, okay? Strong focus on civil rights and anti-discrimination. Now, I do believe in that, but a lot of that is also aimed at racial minorities, women, LGBTQ, immigrants, stuff like that, okay? Economic fairness, healthcare as a right, education opportunity, environmental protection, social liberalism like pro-choice, immigration and diversity is big. So again, even some of these things I agree with. But what happens is when a lot of these black conservatives start to talk about limiting their mindset, the difference is they're still stuck. If you go to the Republican Party like Brandon Tatum has, or to the conservative movements, now I vote Republican, I'm not MAGA, all right? And the reality is, if you don't own what you have, you're still down bad, okay? And I want to explain this because I've asked a guy a very interesting question.
I remember hearing that, and then I asked that about him and he's like, yeah, I feel like the right is a bit more logical and things like that. You said the left is more emotional, so I feel like you think the right is more logical?
Yeah, I'd agree with that take.
Okay.
So the guy says he agrees more with the right. He agrees with everything on the right, except for what? He doesn't agree with ownership. That's the problem. He doesn't agree with ownership. And how do we know this with black conservatives, okay? Or how do we know this with the so-called black conservatives? You see, the one thing about the black church own what they have, okay? The black conservatives don't own anything. The Republican conservative ecosystem, Fox News, the Heritage Foundation, Turning Point USA is white or Jewish funded. I mean, even the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, is owned by a Jewish person. Black conservatives are in this space as commentators or spokespeople, never owners of the platforms, okay? Candace Owens built her fame inside of Turning Point USA, funded by right-wing donors. She wasn't funded through a black-owned machine. Now, you can argue and say that, hey, O'Shea is Dusty. You can say, Tariq or whoever else or Boyce is, not as big as any of those people. But whatever we have, we got it from you guys, okay? And so the people who can control our success is our people. But this is not what happens with black conservatives. A guy like Brandon Tatum, Candace Owens, you're dependent on conservative infrastructure anyway. So what do you really have to lose? Well, you still don't own your stuff. You're still depending on somebody else to make decisions for you. So you're going from the Democrats to make decisions for you to Republicans to make decisions for you. And so when we position it like that, it's bad. Now, if we position it as we want to own our own community and then we can be like the Jews and vote left or right, then it makes sense. But all of these guys who get their wake up call and they're now on the right, all of them are down bad. You don't own anything. You don't have anything. Okay, so what do you have to lose? Everything if you don't own anything. Brandon Tatum doesn't own anything. Candace Owens doesn't own anything. Not as black collectives. They're still being paid independently by whites. They have no infrastructure in what they're talking about. If they were like the black church, something like that, it'd be different. But they are not. And ultimately, what happens is nobody respects you if you don't have ownership. So just because you're a black guy and you're talking in the way you're talking about it now, they still don't respect you. Your community still doesn't have anything, and the black conservatives will get pushed around like anybody else. This is why whenever you hear Brandon Tatum say something that's wrong or something that doesn't make sense, or he starts pushing Israel, the whites will start coming after him and they'll start disrespecting him as if he's a nobody, because in their camp, he is a nobody. He is a person that's just willing to say something for a check, and so he can't be trusted, right? He doesn't own anything. That's different than Ben Shapiro in the Daily Wire, all right? That is very different. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, they own what they have. They fund what they have. And until blacks on the left or to the right fund what you got, nobody takes you seriously, okay? So you still got everything to lose if you're not paying for anything. And I know I've taken criticism from people. Why did you vote for Trump? Well, okay, I understand what you're saying. Why did you vote for the left? I mean, equally, we would be wrong. I mean, you're not putting any money into what you believe in. Ultimately, blacks don't want to put money into what they want to be in and to be independent. They don't want to do that. Black people don't want to support each other and then complain about racism. That is the fundamental problem that happens with the black community. All right? And so if you don't spend your money on your own people or on your own self, then it doesn't matter what you believe. Period. That's the whole point. Sorry to tell you, that's how it works. So guys, what do you think? It's your boy Yoshi Jackson back at it again with another episode of The Celebrity Junk. For all that you do, subscribe to the bell. We're out.